how long are these? I'm going to say missions is probably
generally a mission is between like 3 and 6 months.
okay.
What we were assigned to do in 2010 ended up taking us 2.5 years.
Oh, I was just going to say, but if it takes root, right? Like if it bears fruit, then they start extending it.
Sort of.
Okay.
What ends up happening is if it bears fruit, they have to ask themselves the question, they being CIA leadership, has to ask themselves the question, if we extend this with the same people, do we run the risk of losing the people who have set it up? Or do we replace the people who have set it up and make it more of an institutionalized process? Right? Think of it like a director of sales or something like that in a business. When you have a good director of sales, do you keep them as the director of sales or do you move them up to become the vice president of sales? Right? That's the same kind of process that happens at CIA.
Okay.
And oftentimes what they want to do is they want to move you up because it's a major loss. It's a loss on multiple fronts. If a successful officer gets captured in the line of duty, because then not only do you lose the successful officer and all of their intellectual property and all of their continuity operationally, but you also end up having an international issue.
Right.
Whereas if you can fleet that person up in the chain of command and replace them with somebody who's more disposable, you end up documenting their processes, and now you can basically just institutionalize the process and protect the asset. Right? People don't realize this is how CIA works, but a lot of times what ends up happening is if you are captured, like there was a guy I worked for. There's a guy I worked for at CIA. I don't even know if I can say it. I probably can't say his name publicly, even though I'm pretty sure he's overt.
Jimmy.
So I worked for Jimmy at CIA. Jimmy was captured by SVR in Russia during an assignment that he had in Argentina in like the late 90s. So he's captured by the Russians in Argentina, extradited to Russia, where he spends 3 to 6 months in a Russian prison until there's a spy swap between CIA and Russia in the early 2000s. He gets to come back from Russia. Well, now they don't ever want him to be at risk of being captured again. So how do they protect him? They promote him into positions of authority, right? That protects him from ever going overseas, and it rewards him for a job well done, right? Even though most of the people that work for him are like, that dude is a train wreck, that dude is mentally unstable, that dude has alcohol issues, that dude is a CI security risk. So popular opinion was irrelevant because CIA had a way of basically putting him into golden handcuffs. Keeping him in the organization and moving him up is how they kind of kept him under control.
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, in like the Bureau of Prisons, if they have somebody who is a train wreck, you know, they can't fire. They have such a good union. They can't fire them. They'll promote them just to get them. We can promote you and send you way over here to get you out of the prison that you're in, just to get rid of you and move you up. So I always say that, like, you know, the people at the top are the ones that were the most problems.
And that's often, I mean, that's not just true in CIA and the prison system. That's part of the flaw that happens in our government professional system. Yeah. Your generals are not always the best soldiers. They're just the soldiers who were problem children who got migrated up the ranks so that they wouldn't cause more problems, right? Your public officials are not always the best public official, just the ones who stuck around.
Right. Right. So how bad is the situation if you get grabbed and brought to another country and first of all, if they've grabbed you and brought you to another country and you say, no, I just work at a tire plant, I'm not this person. If they grabbed you and pulled you to the other country, the truth is they're 99.99%. Right. So you can hold out and say, no. But first of all, nobody's holding out forever.
Right.
You know, but how bad would the treatment be of a U.S. CIA agent in another country? Does it depend on the country? Probably
100%. Yeah, it depends on the country and it depends on the geopolitics at the time, right? So there's a pretty famous case out there about two Americans in the 1950s who were captured by China. Their names were Downey and Facto. And these two officers went into China to help evacuate an asset out of China. But if you remember, 1950s China was the very beginning of the Maoist revolution, right? They had just become communist.
Right.
And there was still a large nationalist component in the country that was allies with the United States from the end of World War II. So you can imagine how different that China is or was from the China that is now.
Right.
Downey and Facto were captured in mainland China in like 1952. They were not released from China until 1974.
Wow.
They were there for over 20 years. They both had children. They both had marriages. They were both legally announced as dead after about 3 years. They had funerals. Their families didn't know they existed. And
did the CIA know that they were there?
The CIA knew that they were there, but they had no plan for getting them out. They had no way of getting them out, and they did not want them to become chips in a geopolitical game.
So anytime they're brought up, they just go, keep them.
Yeah, we don't. So yeah,
they just deny that they were ever CIA to begin with.
That's what plausible deniability is, right? Plausible deniability means that you can plausibly to the public deny that that person is CIA. It does not mean that you can plausibly deny it to a foreign government.
Okay.
It means that you can plausibly deny it to the American people, right? So these guys ended up being there for like 22 years until China released them in the early 1970s after Nixon made peace with China and there was all this cooperation with China. And then these two guys come back and they get 22 years of back pay and they get medals. Horrible. And then they get reunited with their families. And their daughter, who like one of the guy's daughters was like 7 when he left and she was 29 when he came back. And like, there's no relationship there.
No.
So how were they treated? They were treated poorly. They were systematically tortured, systematically interrogated. They were kept like one breath from death until the Chinese government transformed to the place where they realized like, oh, we might be able to use these guys as political chips with the US government. So then they were treated a little bit better. Plus, after 2 or 3 years of like torture and interrogation, there's such a thing as your information becoming obsolete.
Right.
The way that CIA was running operations in 1958 is not the same way they were running it in 1952. So what's the point in torturing these guys? You're not going to get any new information. So that's just one example, right? And then you got other places like there was a major flap in Paris, France in 1998, where 2 CIA officers were captured by the French DGSE. And France is a place where there's flaps more often than people realize because the French are actually very astute at intelligence. Most people don't realize that.
But they're also allies to a degree, right?
So why are we spying on them?
Right. Well, we spy on everybody.
And everybody spies on us, right? There are no real allies in this world.
Right.
So there's a flap in 98. These 2 guys get captured by the French DGSE. They go into a French prison, but they're treated very, very well, right? Because the French are like, oh, mon ami, we spy on you, you spy on us. Right. So we don't want to cause a big international incident.
Right.
So we're going to
just let you keep spying.
But we can't let you keep spying. So we're going to put you under house arrest in a nice hotel and we're going to take care of you for 3, 6, 8 weeks while the US and the French figure it out. And then we're going to extradite you and we're going to get French spies back in our prisoner swap. So it absolutely depends on the country and the geopolitics at the time.
Mm. Okay.
But it's not always a death sentence. And it's very rarely a death sentence because a spy is a very valuable asset when a foreign country detains them, right? You got access to names, places, people, organizational hierarchy, modus operandi, the way that things are actually done. Not to mention,
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
Your assets and your tools and any technology that you've developed and that you've used in the field like this, it's a treasure trove of information. So it's much more valuable to keep them alive and then interrogate them. And then after you think that you've reached the end of your secrets, then you move into like the more aggressive, torture and detainment type of techniques. And that's what foreign countries do to us, which is part of the reason why I don't understand why we got so offended when we started torturing terrorists.
Oh yeah, waterboarding.
Yeah, waterboarding.
Like they're not going to die.
It's insane. It's all right. I understand.
We put a big roach in with a guy in a thing like, well, he hates bugs. Like really, he's not going to kill him.
And going back to our conversation about judges, a secret court said it was legal.
Right.
A public court said it wasn't.
Right.
Does that really mean that it wasn't legal? Not any more than it means that it was before. Right. It's just subjective to the judge.
I just don't know that you're going to get like if the person doesn't actually have. My problem is that people, if you don't have the information, you'll say anything at that point. I don't have the information this person wants. So that's the problem I think I have with torture. It's like, it's not necessarily the torture. It's that if they don't have the information, then they start giving anything they can think of until you don't know whether it's reliable.
Well, that's why you have information and intelligence best practices, right? You don't take single source information. So when you're waterboarding somebody and they're like, the bomb is under the bridge in Central Park.
Right.
Okay, well, now that's just a piece of information. Can we corroborate it with any other piece of information anywhere else? Because if we're torturing two terrorists and one of them is like, it's under the bridge at Central Park, and the other one says, it's under the bridge at Central Park, now we can corroborate that information, right? Would they both come up with the same wild story under the same circumstances? Very unlikely.
I was going to say, listen, like these guys are like in, I want to say Saudi Arabia. I think it's Saudi Arabia. I could be wrong. Where they lure the journalist into into their embassy, and then they grab him, flash some guys in, chop them up, and get them out. And then I think, what is it? The Indians that killed
in Canada.
Yeah, in Canada, was it a Sikh?
Yes, a Sikh dissident.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting about that. I've watched several videos on that. Some of the videos say that he had applied to become a Canadian citizen, and some are saying that he had applied and been turned down. He wasn't a Canadian citizen, and then other ones were saying he was a Canadian citizen. So I'm still not sure. I don't know if you know.
No, I don't know the details there. I think what that's highlighting though is the fact that
it was in their country,
right? Yeah, and Canada is one of those countries that America doesn't want to become.
Right.
Where simply by being present in the country, you fall under protections of the country, right? The socialist law that exists up there. So there's a certain level of responsibility that Trudeau takes just because it happened in his territory.
Right.
The most interesting thing about the Sikh's death, and if for anybody who doesn't know that there was an assassination on Canadian soil of a Sikh dissident by the Indians.
Yeah.
The really important things to understand there are, one, India is considered and has long been considered an ally to the West.
Right.
What kind of an ally comes in and kills somebody on their allied soil? It shows you how differently India thinks about an allied partnership versus what Canada and the United States think of as an allied partnership, right? The second thing is that India kills people that it disagrees with.
Right.
Nobody realizes that, right? The difference between India and Pakistan isn't nearly as big as people think it is. Not to mention the fact that Pakistan, as fucked up as it is also an ally of the United States. So how is the United States an ally to both India and Pakistan when India and Pakistan are basically out to wipe each other off the map?
Right.
That's just a little bit of interesting geopolitics there for you. But I thought it was mildly entertaining and wildly interesting to see how Canada and how some of the world reacted to this idea that the Indians came in and killed somebody on Canadian soil. Like, they're still the Indians.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is like, it goes back to our original conversation where it's, what U.S. citizens think of the United States and what the truth is. And then it's even like saying, hey, our allies are doing horrible things. They're horrible people. They shouldn't be our allies. Well, wait a second.
Yeah, wait a second. Time out.
There's no innocent people out there that if we were only dealing with countries that were like-minded, then it would just be us.
Yeah.
Like, who else are we going to be, allies with?
Yep.
So
exactly,
you're going to have to. Some of your allies are going to be monsters.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a fantastic book out there called "A Case for Psychopaths," and there's a strong case for why the world needs psychopaths. As much as the average, what I call bobblehead, your typical cog, the average bobblehead out there is going to bobble their head with whatever the current trend is in media and say, "Oh, psychopaths are bad." No, you know who make up our tier 1 forces? Psychopaths. You know who can make it through SEAL training and not give up? Psychopaths, right? Like the system that we've created in the United States has made it so that we can identify them young at 18, 19 years old, 20 years old, and then cultivate them so their psychopathy becomes a sort of perverted loyalty to a nationalistic sentiment instead of a loyalty to themselves and their own ambitions, right? But that also then leads to problems when your tier 1 Navy SEAL is 50 years old and not a SEAL anymore. Because now they're like...
Now he's on a gun tower taking out college students somewhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they become a person... They become a person who's capable of great skill.
Yeah.
But they're almost like a samurai who lost their master. Right?
That's not a good situation.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. That's why you end up having so much PTSD and so many issues with veterans, especially well-trained veterans. And I know that good luck parsing through all the negative comments now from people who are saying I talk shit about tier 1 operators.
That's fine.
Yeah, but either way,
it's accessible.
They'll agree, right? There are some of them who then go on to like write books and start businesses and do whatever they can because they've been told for 20 years that they're God's gift to the earth.
Right.
And then after 50 SEALs write 50 different books and people are like, oh, a SEAL's just a SEAL. You're like, they don't know how to handle that. Not to mention the Delta operators who simply can't ever admit that they were Delta operators, or the MARSOC raiders who can't admit that they were ever MARSOC raiders.
I'm going to nod my head like I know what both those are. Exactly. Colby and I were talking about the MARSOC guys the other day.
But yeah, there's intensely trained people out there who are on the spectrum of psychopathy. And we need them because who else is going to answer the phone call when somebody says, hey, you guys have 10 days and then you need to raid this house in this desert and kill everybody there. And then you need to take blood samples of all of them and bring back some piece of DNA from this one guy who we think is the leader. And then they're like, okay, bam, 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 cut off an ear, stick it in a bag, stick it in my pocket, catch the helicopter back, pizza for dinner. It's a special kind of person, man.
Yeah, that is definitely. I was just thinking like it's the same thing with with CEOs or con men or whatever, because they have to do they're not cut people's ears off, hopefully, but they have to sometimes
only on Friday.
Yeah, sometimes it's that guy at the boardroom, at the boardroom meeting who says they're trying to get a deal that will save their company and make everybody millions, and the company saying, "You're telling me absolutely 100% you can do that? Oh, absolutely, we can do this. We've got right now. We're already tooling up. This will be done within 30 days. I give you my word." And the two guys sitting next to him who are just normal guys who graduated college and are just your average citizen are sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, what did Jim just say? We haven't talked to anybody. There's nothing being tooled up 30 days. I don't think so." And they're sitting there like and saying nothing. The guy's like, "All right, well, we're ready to go. All right, well, we're going to need the deposit at this time and this time." Walks out with 100% confidence. The other guys walk out and go, "Oh my God, what do you?" Doesn't matter when we get close to 30 days. We'll get a 2-week extension. By that time, they've already invested in us. They can't pull back. We spent their $50 million. So, they're like, "Oh my God, you're lying. You're this, you're that. That's fraud. That's this." Doesn't matter. They'll be too deep in by that point to change their mind. And listen, the people that build our submarines and our boats and our planes, Boeing and
Northrop Grumman.
they do the same.
That's how it works.
But the projects they're taking on are immense, and that you need somebody to do those types of things to get things moving. Otherwise, they never get out of committee.
Correct.
And you never get those things built.
There's so much complexity to how those big deals are closed on the government sector and in the private sector. There's so much complexity there that your average person can't comprehend it. Right. The idea of saying yes to something that you're not totally sure of. I mean, everything about a bobblehead's cog upbringing in public school, private school, and college tells them that you don't overpromise and underdeliver. You never let yourself do that. But then what actually happens is at the highest scales, you're exactly right. You end up having to put on this fake bravado. You have to put on this air of confidence that you've got it all figured out, because if you don't give them that peace of mind, then you don't get the investment that's critical to what you actually need to have in order to start the project. And you're totally right. That's how, the Joint Strike Fighter was delayed for 5 years before it actually hit the skies. And that's how the new stealth bomber was delayed. That's how silent engine submarines were delivered. None of them were delivered on time. None of them were delivered within budget. None of them were many of them were actually delivered by a different provider because they had to change contracts after 5 years because they were like, you know what, you've missed the deadline twice. So now we're just going to take all of your IP and give it to Boeing or give it to Northrop Grumman or give it to Mantech or give it to somebody else, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking the Kennedy speech when he says, we're going to go to the moon and do the other things that the other hard things and turns around. And the next day, scientists are getting phone calls saying, so how are we going to do this? He's like, what are you talking about? It sounded like he had it all wrapped up. No, you're in charge. I'm in charge of what? Yeah. I don't even know how we're going to do that. To the moon. Doesn't matter. He just promised it. It's going to happen. Wow. So, it's insanity. So,
but that's also part of another superpower that we have with our government is that oftentimes the first adopter of technology is the federal government. As much as we're having consternations about AI right now, the first time I touched AI, I was at CIA. People didn't even know AI existed. I didn't even know AI existed. I watched like the Terminator movie on Monday. And then on Wednesday, they put me behind a console and they were like, oh yeah, there's an AI on the other end of this console. And you're like, there's a what?
Like you're going to have a conversation with it. Yeah,
it's insane, right? And it wasn't a very good conversation. It wasn't nearly as good as what you get right now talking to Bard or ChatGPT.
Right.
But you were able to basically be like, find me this person. And it was like, okay, Andrew, here's this person. And here's what we understand about this person. And here's where we believe they're going next. And you're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And somebody made a fortune. I can't tell you who, and I can't tell you what company, but Wikipedia will. Somebody made a fortune building that AI for CIA. right? It's insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because we used to joke about having Facebook friends, right? That you never meet, but my wife's daughter, Mary Shelley, spent all day chatting with like Chat GPT. I mean, all day, like they have like a friend feature or whatever it is, and just joking and telling her jokes, and I mean, literally giggling and laughing on like she's talking with a friend on the couch, and you're going, it's like, what are you doing? Oh my God, I just this, and they just told me a joke, and it's so funny, and I'm just asking questions, and it was like this isn't even. Now it's not even a Facebook friend who's at least a real person on the other end. Like this isn't even a real person. You can have a pretend girlfriend. You can have it's such a vastly different world than it was when. Yeah.
And it's going to continue changing, right? And if anything, it's that changing face of the world that makes me so much more comfortable dealing with people who were already outcasts of the normal world anyways. Right? The criminals, the spies, the folks like us who who refuse to be stepped on, those are the people who are taking control of their own future, their own destiny. So in the future, as much change is coming, as scary as it is, we've been fighting for ourselves already. So we'll just keep scrapping all the way to the end. It's all the cogs in the middle. It's all the quiet future entrepreneurs. It's all the quiet future podcasters. It's all the ambitious people who refuse to pursue their ambition. They're the ones I feel sorry for because they're the ones that are literally going to get stepped on and left behind as they continue to wonder if they should take a chance, if they should take a risk.
I was going to say, it's like, did you ever read, there was a book called, I think it was called Syrup by, I think it was Max Berry wrote it. I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm pretty right on that. Where he was talking about how there were certain people, like almost everybody, he said, has a multi-million-dollar idea within their lifetime. The difference is that most people just don't act on it. Like how many times has somebody been like, bro, I was talking to my buddy about that right there. And they're watching a commercial or something came out on, Google or there's some new thing and they're talking about it. They're like 10 years ago, me and my buddy but you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like that's my idea. No, it's not.
Yep.
Like it may be your idea, but it's his company and he did something. And so those are the people that make, hundreds of millions of dollars because someone like, Elon Musk says, yeah, we're going to do an electric car. And yeah, there have been people have tried and we're going to do it. Yeah, but you need, yeah, but that's not good. They'll only get 200 or 300 miles. I know there's no, but you know what if we're going to go ahead, we're also going to build all these electrical chargers and you're insane.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
It's true.
But those are the guys that make tons of money. And so I have one more question. Is that when you met your wife, I know just from, talking with you and is it you met your wife and you guys kind of decided, hey, we want to have a family and this is just not the best environment. Working in the CIA is just not the best environment for that.
Right.
And you left. Like, what was your plan when you left? Because I'm thinking you're more of a long-term planner. What was the plan that we were going to do for a living when you left, and where did it end up? Like, was doing the YouTube podcast, like, was that something we're going to make an attempt at, or was that the sole goal?
Yeah, there was no plan.
Oh,
yeah. So no, we were actually in the middle of an operation when my wife took a pregnancy test and found out she was pregnant. And I'll never forget the day because she came out of our little 4-apartment bathroom with tears in her eyes. And I was like, what's wrong? And then she showed me this birth control test and she was like, I've taken it 3 times. And I was like, we're pregnant. Like, this is a good news story. And then she handed me an unused pregnancy test and she's like, I think it's broken. You pee on it. Right. So she was crazy. She was like in the pits of despair. And I was on this high. I was like, we're going to have a baby. But once she was able to level back out again, we had a conversation and we were like, you know what? We didn't join CIA to be CIA until we were 60. We joined CIA to see if it would be a good fit and see how it would work. But we've always known that we wanted to be parents, both of us individually and then married too. We knew it was something we always wanted to do. So now the timeline just got taken out of our hands and now we're pregnant. So how are we going to handle this? So we decided to give CIA another year and a half of time. And in that year and a half, we had a child and our child was, 9 months old. And CIA had no interest at all in facilitating our goals as parents. They were like, you're CIA agents first. And we were like, well, we would like to be parents. And I remember this conversation, going to my supervisor and saying, just give me 5 years. It's like, just give me 5 years in a cushy desk job in Virginia. I'll do anything. Just give me 5 years to raise my first child, get them into school, have a second child before my wife becomes, at an age where she's afraid to have more babies, have my second child so that we can get like a nanny or a daycare set up. And then you can have your way with us. Then my wife and I'll be back. Like, we'd love to keep serving. And they had no appetite for that. They're like, no, this is your assignment. You need to do this. If you don't do this, then your career's tanked. And I was like, well, then I'm just going to leave. And I went back home and told my wife, it's time for us to resign. And she did not want to resign. She did not want to leave CIA. I told her the same thing CIA told me. She went back in, had a conversation, got the same kind of stiff arm. And then we were both like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work because CIA is not going to recognize us as human beings. It's only going to ever see us as cogs in their machine.
Right.
That's sexy and cool and fun when you're 29 years old, traveling the world and taking risks with a life that you don't appreciate.
Right.
When you have a child that depends on you, it's not fun and sexy anymore.
Right.
So we put in motion our plan to leave. Nobody left. The attrition rate in 2014, when my wife and I left CIA, was 0.2%. The only people who left CIA were retirees who left on Friday, took a contract with a private intelligence company, and came back in the door on Monday. That was the cycle. But to have two successful middle career officers just throw in the towel, they had no idea what to do with us. So we left. Dude, it was humiliating. I lived in my in-laws' garage for 6 months trying to find work. And I couldn't because I had a resume that was written by CIA. I couldn't write my own resume because it's a published piece of content. So somebody else had to write it for me. And it was horrible. Misspellings, typos. There were all the referrals, like all the actual references were empty leads. So if you called the reference, nobody was there. It was an empty fake phone number that was created by CIA. So like, I wasn't getting hired. So what ended up happening is, just to get a job, I ended up having to be a con man and fraud my way into a corporate 10 company.
I was going to say, you couldn't come up with your own version of your resume?
I would have been held legally culpable to publish a document that was not reviewed and approved by CIA.
That's a prick move.
That's a prick move. They didn't know what to do with us. They had never seen it before. Thank you, Donald Trump, in 2016. Because when Trump took office in 2016, the attrition rate skyrocketed. And when he started taking a hostile approach to CIA and he didn't like what CIA was saying about him, he stopped the funding to CIA.
Right.
CIA has started seeing double-digit attrition since then. They have a hard time holding on to people. They have a hard time hiring people. So that forced CIA to figure out how to handle that many people who were leaving.
Right.
But anyways, to answer your question, it was in the process of lying my way into a corporate career and then having to learn in real time how to do the things I promised the corporate company I could do. Like, I promised them I could do IT project management. I promised them I could code. I promised them everything just to get a job because I had a baby to take care of. And I was living in a garage in Florida and I'm fucking 33 years old. And I was like, this is humiliating. And what I found is that over the 4 years that I worked for that company, all I did was apply what CIA taught me. I applied rapid learning techniques, influence techniques, persuasive techniques, managing dialogues, managing management, right? I worked my way through the chain and I went from making $80,000 a year to $125,000 a year in 4 years working for a company that I lied my way into. And that's when it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh shit, if I can teach other people how to do this, I could make a lot more money and have a bigger impact than what I'm doing right now. And that's where my company started. That's where Everyday Spy came from.
The lying your way.
It's 11:50, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The lying your way into a company just went up a notch in my book. So at that point, so you're working for this company and you started Everyday Spy. What does Everyday Spy do?
Everyday Spy is an online learning platform that teaches people authentic, practical spy skills and tactics that give you an unfair advantage in everyday life. That's what we do. But you don't. It's
not just that. I mean, you do like outings and stuff, right? Like you actually do things where you get people together and you do like
we do training events. Yeah, we do experiences. Yeah, we do. So the company started on a very basic premise, right? How do we teach real spy skills to real people,
right?
To get a real advantage, a real outcome, right? That's all it was. Just be real. It's just like you said earlier on. Kilo 23 connected us,
Right.
because you were like, I need somebody who's not going to toe the party line and tell me something real. And Kilo 23 was like, well, you need to talk to Andy.
Yeah.
Right. So I've always been very focused on being real, because my loyalty is not to CIA. My loyalty is to individuals at CIA and to the mission of protecting the American people, right? Being able to share real stuff with real people is what is so rewarding to me. So we started there. And then what I found is that some people wanted to learn through a blog. So I opened a blog. Some people wanted to learn through online courses. So I created online courses. Some people wanted to learn through live events. So I created live events. Some people wanted to learn under a paycheck that was paid for by their company. So we created corporate events. So the company has very much been reactive. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but my business has been very reactive, because people come and they say, we love what you're teaching. Can you teach it this way? And just like when you reached out to me, I have a propensity to just say yes without really thinking it through.
Right.
So you're like, hey, can you help me with a book? Absolutely. And then I didn't realize how much work that would be. So people come to me with all these ideas. I'm like, yeah, let's try it. Let's see how it works. And then that's how we got to where we are now.